What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Celtics pod. I hope you're all having a glorious start to your Friday morning. And by glorious, I mean absolutely spanking, perfectly, amazingly, every other superlative? Superlative?
I don't know. So superlative. I think you were on a roll there, just stringing those together.
Dude,
so I didn't want to interrupt.
I'm living on the precipice of a vibe right now. I feel super good.
Precipice of a vibe. I love that.
That's the name of the episode right there. Precipice of a vibe. I'm telling you, dude. Woke up this morning. Before we get into it, I'm your boy, Adam Taylor. You know me by now. I'm joined by my co-host, my compadre. And I'm going to say it again. My co-host in crime is how I like to refer to you these days. Mr. Will Weir, coming to you live straight from Austin, Texas, where I'm very jealous of. What's going on, Will, man?
How you doing? What is good, Adam? The precipice of a vibe. We're recording morning after the game for me. Usually we record before some of these games on Thursday nights, but this was too big. We couldn't do it before that. We wanted to make sure that we got y'all something that was representative of what potentially could go down and what did go down last night against the Memphis Grizzlies. And the mood is flowing here. You know, morning time for me. I got my coffee, living off the vibes of last night. Adams, as you all know, rewatches the game the day after from, living in the UK. And this man came on to the screen and had an energy I have not seen all season. This man is ready to go.
Yeah, I'm telling you, dude, we should do these mid-afternoon recordings more often because right now, the way you feel right now, that grogginess and that's how I feel on almost every episode. So this level of energy is rarely seen from me because when we record, I'm like, dude, I'm tired. Right now, I am wired. I'm ready to talk ball. I'm happy. I'm rubbing my hands together with excitement. If you can hear that, let's get some ASMR going.
I'm happy to make that happen. That feels a little bit like a home and home, right? Like home territory for me is we're recording, afternoon my time. It's like 11 p.m. your time, 10 p.m. But we'll switch it up every once in a while. We'll get, a little 8 a.m., little 7, 8 a.m. recording my time. Get it in the afternoon in your time. I'm all down with it, man. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I'm down with it, man. I mean, look, man, when it's a win like this, I need this energy, man. So let's get into this. Let's talk some ball. Usually we'll give everybody like a 15-minute rant of why Lord of the Rings, the first one that was good. But look, man, I want to avoid that today just because there's so many good things to hit on and so much fun. Coach of the year for Coach of the Year. I wish it could potentially be Coach of the Year.
I mean, he's creeping into that combo. It's not as much as we've given criticisms to Ime throughout the season. He's creeping into that conversation. So it's not ludicrous to say that.
So Coach of the Month, though, yeah, Coach of the Year is possible. That's Coach of the Month for Mr. Udoka. I feel like for me, if you can hear a phone ringing, I forgot to put it on mute, but we'll continue. I feel like for me, I feel guilty for some of those comments that I made about Udoka to begin the year. I feel like I lack patience. And we can talk about that at another point, right? But I feel like this game kind of fortified why he was deserving of Coach of the Month. His adjustments were great. I think it showed courage to start Aaron Nesmith. The understanding there was, from what I had, was like, hey, our bench unit's rolling right now. We want to keep continuity there. So the best thing we can do is keep that bench unit as it is. Nesmith isn't really a big part of that bench unit, so let's plug and play him. And obviously it didn't work out that way. I hope he's okay. I know we'll hear more today. But that entire logic made perfect sense to me, but it took guts, right? That was a gutsy move because if that had backfired, that falls directly on Udoka's shoulders. So it showed a bunch of trust in Nesmith. I think that goes to show that Udoka said all season, like the guys that aren't in the rotation, it's not anything they've done. They're just they're up against it in terms of winning minutes off some of these more experienced players, for the nicest way to say it. But this showed a bunch of trust in Nesmith. I hope it gave him a confidence boost, showed him there is a path to some minutes for him. And I think that Udoka really deserves like a round of applause or some flowers or something for having.
He deserves a bouquet, some candy. He deserves a couple different, gifts at this point. And,
yeah, dude.
Like you said, we'll have a different discussion one day about like how, because I think there's an evolution to Ime throughout the year that's been really impressive. But the word that you just used, gutsy, I really like that because I think that is something that has changed throughout the year for him. And, you think of like last night, starting Aaron Nesmith. A little bit of a surprise, gutsy move. But I like, to your point, I love the rationale of, we know who our guys are. And when we don't have to disrupt one of our units, let's not do it, And like one of the other things that I want to point out that he, not necessarily for last night, but just in general, where it comes to Ime being gutsy, Peyton Pritchard's been in the mix with the closing unit for like 3 of the 4 last games.
Yes,
Think about how many times we sat here. Can Peyton Pritchard get 7 minutes? We were begging for 7 minutes of Peyton Pritchard. And now the Celtics are in 5th place in the Eastern Conference, a handful of games back from 1st place. And if the moment strikes, Ime is not afraid to make a move. And that's something that has been a huge evolution of his coaching style. And he deserves all the credit in the world for that. Ime's rolling right now. Did you hear him kind of cracking jokes with the media after the game? They're like, bro, what adjustments did you make? I forget what the question was, but he was just like, well, you know, it's really nice when we have the coach of the month in there. And so I was like, Ime, yeah, do your thing, man. You deserve it. You deserve it because you've gotten plenty of stuff in a rookie season as a coach. So you want to puff your chest a little bit with them jokes. Crack away, my friend.
Yeah, flex on us, man. Like, flex on, because we've been flexing on you at the start of the season. I want to see that. And I like it when I'm a big fan of people being, especially in like areas as a coach or as a player where you're a public facing figure to some extent. I like it when you peel back that curtain, we see a bit of a hint of your personality sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I mean, Brad Stevens was the worst for that because he was so deadpan. It was like, I think this just is who you are, right? Like dad jokes and you know, like
if you got a beer with him at a bar, like that's, you kind of feel like he kind of would give you the same energy. Like it wasn't that he wasn't like he was putting on a facade. It's like, that's just Brad. That's what it feels like anyway.
Yeah, dude just lives his life on a 5 out of 10 all the time. Just never, you know what I mean? Udoka, I feel like rides that wave a little bit more. It's a bit like, you know, the fan base itself. We ride the good and the bad. So I like seeing that. I like seeing him peel that back a little bit. And as you say, Pritchard's getting some run now. I feel like he's on a really good shooting tear at the moment. I think he's around 40% from deep, maybe just a bit over. Last time I checked, he was at 43.5%. Should have hit mute on that a moment ago. It's not even my phone, so I can just ignore it.
That hotline bling.
Oh, I wish. Yeah, let me just hit do not disturb. Yep. So for me, it's very much along the lines of that's a gutsy move itself, especially because of the defensive drawbacks. But what we've seen is Pritchard's not scared to go and guard a big man. And then they'll scram him out of there if it starts to look like it's a dangerous position. Udoka's system's really starting to win me over, you know, and I feel like he's adding wrinkles as we go. We've seen in the Hawks game, we saw Al Horford play drop and 1-through-4 would switch around him. In this game, there were moments where he was just like, yo, Al, go guard Ja. You know what I mean? You're switched on to Ja. We're not going to call it, like, we're going to let this ride out. And obviously that's not Udoka calling that out because he's not the puppet master. But it's happening. Like Al Horford's on Ja Morant and you don't feel worried about it. I mean, whoever's guarding Ja, you should feel a little bit worried. But the way the system's designed and the rotations and the help defense and just the intricacy with what they play now in the communication, I never felt concerned with Al on Ja at all. No. And it only happened a few times. I think it was 10 possessions total that I counted where Al kind of had to pick up Ja. But that 10 possessions is something that I don't think would have gone well 4 or 5 months ago. Yeah. And that's no knock on Al. That's a knock on how the team were performing at that moment in time.
And it's Ja Morant. So, you know, like there's not many guys that can stay in front of him. And I think as a team, and you know, Ime even said this in the post game that he felt like it was a quiet 38, I think that Ja Morant had. And I think it's because they were able to contain those consistent runs that Ja was able to go on and really get others going too, you know? Like the one thing they did with Ja, they did a good job of containing him in small spaces. One of the things when I watch Ja Morant that makes him so special is he takes nothing and creates something out of it because he's so athletic, so explosive. And aside from, you know, when he got out in transition last night, like the dunk he had in that first half, my Lord, that was something else. That was a Ja special. But, you know, he didn't get to be able to do that in the half court. And that's, if you watch some of the other games that the Grizzlies have played, he can still, he can turn it on without having to get that head of steam. You know, and that's what's so crazy about Ja Morant is that when he snakes a pick and roll, he almost snakes it like whatever the fastest snake in the world is that can then jump 20 feet in the air. That's kind of what Ja Morant does. And the Celtics did a really good job last night of, even when it's Al Horford, to your point of the way the defensive system works, it's so connected that there was always another body ready to be there. Even if, like, you know, like I think Grant Williams several times, I feel like he stepped in, and whether or not Ja made the shot, he was taking a shot where Grant Williams is straight up verticality right there in his face. Of course, he's not going to jump with Ja Morant, but the point is maybe he got by Al or he got by one of the other bigs, and there's another guy there. There was never not another guy there, and Ja had to take some really difficult shots all night long. And so, despite him putting up 38 points, and then they baited him into taking 12 threes. So that's a win right there. Ja Morant taking 12 threes is a win. He shoots about 4.5 a game. So I think the Celtics defense last night, which, comes from the mind of Ime Udoka, I think they deserve a huge credit. I thought, even with 38 points, I think they did a great job on Ja Morant last night.
Okay, I've got a couple of things I want to hit on here. Some of them are just for comedy value, just for the entertainment, because my brain's working at a decent capacity right now. So the first one is, do you reckon when Grant Williams defends you and you miss a shot, he just whispers in your ear, do you want to play Catan later? Do you know what I mean? He's just like,
first of all, I want to take him up on that offer, but yes. And I will say this, I've been talking about this with our other co-host Greg a lot. One of my favorite subplots for the rest of the season is Grant's confidence. Grant is constantly throwing up the German 3, or he's like, talking trash. Like Grant's confidence over the last couple of weeks, where he's just like, now that because it was solidified a little bit before the trade deadline. Like, listen, man, you're part of the 7 or 8 or whatever deep we're going. Like, you're a crucial part of this. And I think that even though he had been getting consistent minutes, it feels like something flipped. And like Grant feels like a new guy when he's out there. The way that he attacks closeouts now, he's not afraid to. The way that he's like taking different types of threes. It's not just all catch and shoot. Now it might be a pump fake, a step to the side. He may, there was, I think of the game against the Pistons, he kind of drove up, gave like a hard jab step, got the defender off, took the 3. Like Grant is just a different guy mentally right now. And I am here for it because it's the nerdiest swag. And that's the type of swag that I want to see, because it's just unbelievable comedic value night to night.
We need some t-shirts, hashtag nerd swag.
Nerd swag. That is Grant to a T.
So the other one I wanted to do, and I'm terrible for this, like I'll sit here and talk about X's and O's and talk about basketball for hours, literally hours, and I won't get bored. But one thing I'm terrible for is playing basketball Frankenstein. And what I mean by that is I look around at a player and I'm like, what players would you need to take parts of to form this player that we're seeing in front of us, right? And I played that with Ja Morant this morning. So I watched the game and I sat there like, if I was to say that Ja was a molecular binding of 2 players, who would it be? And I ended it with Allen Iverson and Robert Williams. And I feel very confident in that now, thinking about it. He's got the athleticism of Rob, because Ja Morant is Robert Williams with handles and far smaller. That's basically what it is. He's got more spatial awareness of what's going on. Yeah. He's not as big, but he's just as explosive in the handles and the creativity and the swagger and the pizzazz. That's all Allen Iverson. So I was very much in that. Ja Morant is the molecular combination of Allen Iverson and Rob.
The Rob Williams threw me up. I love the Allen Iverson combo because I think the swag like matches perfectly, and the fact that he's just never scared, right? Like Ja Morant is, when he was going 4 of 12, and I think at one point he was, maybe like 1 of 7 from 3. But it didn't seem like it. He was never taking bad shots. Like he was open every time. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Giannis last year in the playoffs, where it was like, hey, listen, like I'm going to keep driving. I'm going to keep taking free throws because I know ultimately this is going to be better for my team. And eventually I'm going to start making them. And, Ja started knocking down some threes, and I got a little worried that Ja was going to go on a tear, So, like, he has that type of confidence. So the Rob Williams one's throwing me up. I love the Allen Iverson one. I mean, typically, I feel like Ja's always getting compared to Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, because he just has that explosion, man. And I literally, me and Greg did a 617 podcast right after the game last night. So some of those thoughts are just fresh in my mind. I was saying, like, watching Ja, it's kind of like, for the dunk contest, they always talk about smaller guys tend to get better scores because it just looks cooler because they're smaller, and like when they jump out the building, that's what a little bit of Ja, but he just does it every night and does it in such unique ways that we don't ever see. Like Ja Morant being the size that he is with the swagger that he has, the Allen Iverson level swagger, and then jumping out the building. It's such a unique combination, and I love watching him, man. He's a league pass favorite of mine.
Yeah, the reason I use Robert Williams is just because I just felt like it was very cliche to be like, oh, he's Allen Iverson.
Yeah, I got you. Thinking outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, who's super bouncy that can jump out the gym? Rob Williams. I've just watched Rob Williams do it. That's who I'm going to go with. The other thing is we were talking about like Ja containing Ja, and I think that one of the biggest points of emphasis there was it wasn't just that you didn't let him get to the rim. You took away the half-court offense almost exclusively for that first half of basketball. Like, I remember Scal saying this as well, and it's something I've got in my notebook. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I'm holding my notebook up with lots of little timestamps and stuff that I want to go back and explore later today or tomorrow. And one of the things that Scal said was, at the time, he was like, the Grizzlies are only getting offense off turnovers and rebounds. They're not creating anything in the half court. And that was because Boston was swarming. Now, don't get me wrong. The Grizzlies done a fantastic job on Tatum for the most part of that game. 21 points of Tatum's explosion came in the fourth. For the first and second quarter, they were doubling, tripling. They were really making it difficult for Tatum to get his shots off, to find any rhythm. And I feel like that was a big part of like both teams' defensive structure was like, take away the half-court offense and complete for the Celtics until like against the Grizzlies, because they didn't want to give Triple J an opportunity, really. He had himself a good game. They wanted to make sure that any kickouts to Desmond Bane were picked up instantly because of how volatile he is as a shooter. Whereas the Grizzlies were very much just like, yo, get the ball out of Tatum's hands, we're going to be okay. Because these dudes can't shoot threes and they don't have Jaylen Brown to worry about. And I feel like they overplayed their hand on Tatum, because once he figured out how to manipulate those double teams, he was getting wherever he wanted.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it took him, really in the second half. I know that he picked it up big. And what's up? We got a special guest appearance from our teacher in arms. What up, Greg?
Well, it's good. I saw that the link was in the chat, and I was like, you know what? I got a couple minutes. Let me hop on, see what they're talking about, see if I can give any insight.
Yeah, man, we're talking about Tatum right now, and kind of how the Grizzlies game planned against them and how he reacted. Let's get your take on it while you're here.
Oh man, well, I don't know what you've already covered so far, but I just thought Tatum, and you and I talked about this last night, Will, but his ability to read defenses now and to manipulate defenses is just going to a whole nother level. And the physicality that he plays with, like, it took him a while, I think, to get used to it and to kind of figure out how he wanted to attack them. But once he was able to recognize, like, oh, they're guarding me this way, I have this much space when I come off a pick and roll, they're double teaming from this side, so when the double comes, I'm going to get rid of it, get it back, and go. I just thought everything that he was doing, he was very patient. It's like the classic superstar game, right, where you don't try to do too much at the beginning. You feel it out. You get everybody else involved the best you can. And when it's crunch time, that's when you take over. And that's what we saw in the fourth quarter. And I started to kind of get that feeling a little bit, around the beginning of the fourth quarter. I think he had like 16 points. He ended up going for 21 in the fourth. And I was just like, you know what? If Tatum can get going here, if you get a couple buckets, then watch out. And that's what happened. He hit a couple floaters and then he took off.
I mean, for me, it was very much the reactionary thing, right? So if you look at the way they D'd him up in the first and second quarter, it felt like to me Tatum was just taking mental notes. He was like, right, you're swarming me quick, you're blitzing every time I get the ball. The Celtics at the beginning, one of my first notes in the first quarter was they ran a lot of wedge screens for him, which is literally just a back screen to get Tatum into the post. And the Celtics were just trying to get that post action going. They called it, if you saw, Grant Williams was kind of telling Tatum, like, yo, run punch more because it's open all the time. Punch is just a common way of saying post up. It's a high-low entry pass. But even Grant Williams was telling Tatum, get into the post or start feeding guys in the post and running punch. And I think that Tatum was getting really good looks there. It was just how quickly the Grizzlies were reacting. And then later in the game, the Celtics started adding more movement in. So guys were curling into that screen to drag defenders out of the way. And Tatum would then relocate to the weak side and get the ball there instead. And it was very much like it was an analysis of the first half. It was like, right, this is how they're covering me. If they cover me this way in the third and fourth, then this is how we're going to counter. And I feel like that's been a cerebral adjustment from the Celtics, especially the coaching staff. From January onwards, they've seen far more cerebral in letting teams show their hand early and then kind of countering or snapping at that hand, like that alligator or crocodile out of Peter Pan, where it snacks off Hook's hand. Hook's got no hand left. They're doing that sort of stuff. I'm going to call it the Peter Pan offense. That's what I want to call it.
Are we about to go into a tangent about Peter Pan? Because like I could talk about Hook all day. My man Rufio, that's like my favorite character when I was a little kid.
You wanted to be Rufio as a kid.
For real, that was like you should have had higher aspirations than being one of Hook's boys.
Well, Rufio was the leader of the Lost Boys, right? He was the Asian dude with the red feather in his hair. Yeah, that was my guy.
I think I can picture that dude. But no, I'm just saying, like, like it was that they're getting the information from a defense early, and sometimes we've seen Jaylen Brown might be a guy that leads the way in the first quarter because he just likes to start games hot. But overall, the Celtics are very much in acquiring information mode. They're probing defenses, seeing where those reactions are, testing out different methods on how to try and get the defense to bite, and then they're flipping the script in the third and fourth. And that's why I'm calling it that Peter Pan offense, because it's more Hook offense than anything, right? Because they're getting it, then bang, we're gonna snap it off, and then we're gonna attack you like this instead.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that they do a lot, that Tatum specifically did last night, is just make the simple pass to get out of those traps. A lot of times there would be where they would trap up around like mid-court area, and you just get robbed at the 3-point line. You hit him with that simple pass to get out of that trap, and now you have a great passer going 4-on-3 against the defense. Like, it's little things like that, and Tatum himself I think last night, even though there's a couple sloppy turnovers mixed in there throughout the game, like, we saw the evolution of him becoming a playmaker. I was watching earlier today, I was watching a few highlights before we came on here with my cup of coffee, and like that alley-oop that he has to Rob Williams when he's in the lane, and like it's usually he's going to force up a floater or some type of fadeaway, and now he's dishing it off for an alley-oop to Rob Williams. Like, it's little things like that Jayson Tatum just involving himself as a playmaker, and it's going to help big time when when the Celtics shoot the ball. They're like the guys outside of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, when they shoot the ball well, it's been proven time and time again this year that this team is really, really hard to beat. So when you get 4 of 8 from Al, you get 4 of 9 from Marcus, 2 of 4 from Derek White, 3 of 3 from Grant Williams, 1 of 3 from Peyton Pritchard, like, that's going to be, it's going to be really hard for any team in the league to come and beat the Celtics. And on top of that, you add Jayson Tatum goes for 21 in the fourth, 37 points overall. Like, that's a recipe, even without Jaylen Brown, that's a recipe that most teams are not going to be able to beat. So I think last night was a huge step in the process of this team asserting themselves into that true contender role.
You know who else needs flowers? And I will say this first. One of Tatum's drives will forever live etched into my brain because it was so beautiful. And beautiful is the right word. We could go gorgeous. We could go stunning, breathtaking, whatever you want, whatever word you want to use. Choose your I'm not going to make myself look silly here. Choose your word. But there was one way he was driving. The defense collapsed on him. It was in the fourth quarter, and he kind of like twitched right. So that he's driving right-handed. He's grabbed the ball in his gather, and he's twitched like he's about to dump the ball off. And the defense has kind of jumped to close the passing lane. Then he's just Euro step straight to the rim, and it was just beautiful. If you remember, it's the one where Scal said, "Oh my God, he just keeps getting better and better." I don't know if that triggers the memory of the play for you. But we spoke on Tatum. I think we spent quite a bit of time on Ja too, and that was for the Grizzlies to do more than us, but the dude's just so good. One guy we haven't touched on really, other than saying he guarded Morant for a few minutes, was Horford, who, turning back that clock, he was not average Al. He was, oh my God, Al Horford is amazing, Al. How do you guys feel about that performance? Because me personally, I'm like, dude, I don't care if he's going to get another 30 million next year. This guy can't go nowhere.
I love what I saw from Al. Will and I are huge Al Horford fans. Even back when he in his first stint with the Celtics, we were the two guys that were like leading the Al Horford is not average train. Right? We were going at Lou Merlone every chance we got, and we didn't have a podcast at the time, but we were going at it.
We were trolling in the DM tweets.
Yeah, we were definitely trolling. And Al, I mean, he played 40 minutes last night, which is not sustainable. But when you're able to dig into those reserves a little bit, when you have a couple days off, we don't play again until Sunday, and that you can still rely on him when necessary to go to those lengths. That's why it's important for some games for Al Horford to only play 22 minutes or 25 minutes, so that when we need him to go the extra 10, we can. And that 3-point shot's really coming along. He talked about it after the Hawks game when he hit that big shot in the fourth quarter, and he said, the guy that was hyping me up all year has been Jayson Tatum. He's been encouraging me to shoot through the slump, and that's exactly what we need, because that 2 big lineup with Horford and Rob Williams, that's been great defensively. It's worked well enough offensively, but what's really going to take that to the next level is if Al Horford becomes, an average 3-point shooter, shooting around 34, 35%. And that's kind of what we're seeing from Al of late. You know, he was 50%, I think, last night from three, which is probably not something you can expect every night. But if he's at 35 to 38% and he becomes a threat where people actually have to run at him when he's at the 3-point line, that's big for the Celtics.
Yeah, vintage Al last night. Dust off the wine cellar. Like, that was the Al Horford from the first go around with the Celtics. And Greg, I think something you said really stuck out to me is, like, you know, when we need him to be able to go, maybe not 40, but go 35 plus or whatever. And that makes me think of, you know, if we get into a playoff series with a team like the Cavs, that's going to be a team that we absolutely do need him to play 35 plus minutes or so. And he's going to have a huge role in some of those games. If the Bucks get all of their guys back and they decide to go big, that's going to be a series where we need Al to step up and be that guy. And, you know, like, the shooting hasn't been consistent this year, but other than that, I think Al has brought a steadiness to this team throughout, especially on the defensive end. He's just been very reliable. He's not going to give you the ultra highs that you get from Rob Williams, where he's going to have 5, 6, 7 blocks in a game or whatever it might be. But Al is just reliably consistent. And last night, I was so happy, as Greg mentioned, you know, it was really funny. The first time, so Greg and I have lived in Austin, Texas for so long now. After Al Horford got signed, he and I would watch every game together. We were roommates at the time, so we'd watch every game, and we would, like, develop this really strong affinity for Al Horford. Like, yo, Al is our guy. And at one point, we were having, like, crazy conversations, like, hey, is Al, like, one of our top 5 favorite Celtics of all time, like, in our lifetime? You know what I mean? Like, excluding guys that we weren't alive to actually watch in real time. And, like, we were having those type of discussions, and then we go back to Boston for, it was that playoff series against the Bulls, when we ended up losing the first 2 games. Rondo goes down, we come back and win 4-2. And we were shocked when we got around, like, Boston, people that just live in Boston, who were like, man, Al's been kind of disappointing this year. And Greg and I started losing our minds, because Al has been a guy that throughout his tenure with the Celtics, and I think the first time around, people started to get the idea of what makes Al so special. And this time around, to your point, Adam, I'm like, honestly, like, yeah, is the 30 million or 26 million he gets too much? Of course. But I think what he brings to this team, you see why Brad made that move and gave up a first round pick. What he brings to this team is so valuable and gives this team that extra potential edge from what we could have had. Was what he's going to give us versus what Kemba or a first round pick would give us. Al's going to give us that 10 times over and be very important to this team down the stretch run.
Yeah, and that was the Gerald Green series, right?
Yeah.
The Gerald Green, Brad made the big switch, putting Gerald Green at the 4, and then all of a sudden the Celtics come back and beat the Bulls. Yeah, but with Al, one more thing. In his first stretch, right, he was never KG. I'm not going to say he was KG, but he was offering, I don't know, 85% of what KG offered after the injury, maybe even before the injury, because KG was already, like, diminished a little bit athletically. He wasn't quite the culture changer that KG was, right, to where he was just tenacious. But the skills that he actually has on the court, they have very similar games. You know, KG was obviously on steroids compared to what Al is. But even now, like, at Al, 35, 36 years old, the productivity that we're getting out of him is more than we ever got out of KG, like 2010, 2011, 2012, right? Like, he's so good for this team. I can't even imagine what this season would look like if Al Horford was not on the team. Imagine if we hadn't moved Kemba, if we still tried to make something work out of Kemba, that wasn't going to work. So the fact that we have Al and he's been so productive and he set the tone defensively, I mean, the guy deserves his flowers for sure, as Adam started this conversation with. But Adam, we haven't got your perspective on Al.
I'm just trying to find where Al sits in blocks per game. To be honest,
I'm going to guess top 25.
Okay, I've got it up now. So so we've got Robert Williams is second only to Rudy Gobert for blocks, 2.2 a game. Al Horford is 12th. So you've got your starting 2 big lineup of Rob and Al are 2 of the best 15 shot blockers in the league. Like, that tells you a lot about why the Celtics have been so good defending around the rim. And for Al at age 35 to be hovering around that top 10 in shot block, I mean, Joel Embiid is 10th. Do you know what I mean? Like, these guys are Jaren Jackson Jr. is 3rd, Whiteside's 9, Robinson's 7, Mobley's 6. Like, these guys are all legitimate, like, defensive pieces. Maybe not Whiteside, but, you know.
He's really tall, though. He's really tall. To his credit, he's massively tall. He has to, by accident, get a couple blocks a game.
But, like, my point being is this is a 35-year-old man that is hanging around some of the most elite rim protectors in the league. and he's doing so in a really understated way. I'm a big fan of this. Like you said earlier, like Al's not the culture-setting guy that KG was, but Al Horford is most definitely part of the culture reset that's happened this season. You know, if everyone's listening, go and read Keith Smith's piece, because Keith Smith's piece is what's made me think of this.
So good.
So I'm basically just paraphrasing what Keith wrote, so obviously I need to credit that. But as Keith said, Horford coming back has helped bring some of that grit and grind back to Boston. It's helped kind of rebuild a sense of self-worth in terms of like we're the Celtics, we represent Boston, this is who we are and what the fans want to see. And obviously I'm not from Boston, so I can't speak on what the fans there want to see, but I know what I want to see. And then Horford's a big part of that. He never gets too high, he never gets too low. He's one of the leading voices in that locker room. And this game specifically, I thought his work on the boards was fantastic. I thought the way he mixed his game up, you know, there were moments where he went into the post and just went old man style with a little drop step or a spin move. And
that one on Steven Adams was beautiful. That was like a time machine throwback.
And I'm working on a piece about that game now, for like with the sole basis of it being about Horford's game. And one of the things that I've kind of noted is we're in an era where big men, like old school big men, completely and utterly on a scrap heap. If you can't evolve to and be at least 65% of a modern day big man, then realistically you're not going to see much time in the league unless you're playing for a team that hasn't moved with the times, and then you get Hassan Whiteside 9th in blocks. But what I'm saying is, like, Horford has kind of found this perfect like synergy. He hasn't gone to Brook Lopez and Blake Griffin route and just become a sharpshooting from free, or, you know, air quote sharpshooter.
I was gonna say, that's a generous assertion to Blake Griffin's capabilities, from air quotes.
But like what he's done is he's like, yo, I'm gonna mix in my post moves, but I'm also gonna mix in some pick and pop threes, some pick and pop mid range. And I think Al Horford's done, like, he's molded the old and the new style of big man and he's like the guiding light. Because if you want to know how you can be an effective big man in every different scenario, then Al Horford should be the guy that you try and model your game after, rather than being very situational.
Hey, Will, have you dropped your bar from last night?
I have not. I forgot about
this
that.
This is the time. You gotta drop it. Let's see what Adam thinks about it.
So last night, Greg and I were talking about this and just talking about kind of the Celtics front line in general, where you have, you know, to your point, we're talking about Al Horford and Rob Williams right now being top of the lead in blocks. And, you know, Daniel Theis gets in the mix last night for 13 minutes and he's stable. You know, this is kind of the role that Daniel Theis was meant to be. And like, it was great when he was, you know, starting for us, and he was overperforming probably, and got himself a nice little contract that's going to carry with him, you know, back to the team now. But really kind of that third role is what you needed. And so what I was talking about is, you know, and I think we've talked about it on this program before too, is that if you have a unicorn, that's great. What you don't want to end up doing is overpaying for those guys in the middle that can't hang with the unicorns, but they're really not good enough on their own just to be your main center, but you're paying them that way. And that's kind of what you have to roll with. So what the Celtics have is that they've got a stable of horses that can go up against those unicorns in any form or fashion. And to your point, you know, they're all malleable. They're a different look, a different flavor that you can throw out there between Al, Rob, and then Theis. And it gives you a little bit of security that if one of those horses isn't able to go, you can still feel pretty confident going into whether it's a game if someone's out, or even a couple games if you're rolling with just Rob and Al, obviously, or if you got to roll with Rob and Theis or Al and Theis, like, you feel really confident that no matter who you're going up against, you know, even if it's one of those unicorns, you got somebody for 48 straight minutes that you're going to be able to rumble with them. So that's something that I think is really underrated, and it's super important about the Celtics team, and where that front court is going to play a huge role when we start to see some of those unicorns down the line.
Yeah, I gotta get out of here in a second, but I just want to let everybody know. Think about this bar that my man Will just dropped. If you don't got a unicorn, you better have a stable full of horses. Let's go. That is an absolute bar.
I love the energy, man. Bringing the energy first thing, and I thought
it's gonna be on the next Black Sheep Optimist slide. I better get a citation on that.
Yeah, that's copyrighted, Mr. Will Weir, circa 2022. We'll be seeing that on a DaBaby thing soon, and we'll be like, yo, DaBaby, listen to the podcast.
Yo, I got the receipts. I'm coming for them.
All right,
talking
guys,
about receipts,
I gotta get out of here.
All right, thank you for joining, man.
Yeah,
have a good day
absolutely.
at work. Have a fabulous Friday. That's what
I
you
will,
need
baby.
to do.
I will. Have fun, guys.
Yeah, dude. All right, later, dude. Well, talking about receipts, one of the things that I kind of had a bit of a whinge about yesterday on a vitamin C's on YouTube, and we'll go back to the basketball thing in a moment, was about a week ago or 5 days ago, I put out a tweet, and I've moaned about this a few times at this point, saying we all owe Ime Udoka an apology. The tweet did well, lots of people saw it, a hell of a lot of impressions. Multiple podcasts spawned within a day saying, do we owe Ime Udoka an apology? Not one of them mentioned that tweet. I want to know, did you all have the same thought as me, or did my tweet be the thing that kind of gave you the inspiration to record that podcast? And if my tweet gave you the inspiration, where was the love to name drop me? I'm insulted. Anyway, we can move on. I'm not really that insulted. It's not that serious, but I just want to keep.
Let's talk about this for a second, because we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, right? And I saw you, and I saw your tweet. And it's something I had been thinking about previously to that. Then I saw it. I was like, okay, I'm not the only one thinking about this. Like, and so, apology. I actually do feel like apology is a little strong. And here's why. I think he deserves a ton of flowers, as we talked about at the beginning of this. He deserves a ton of credit. Like that, I can't overstate enough that he deserves a ton of credit. Like, this turnaround does not happen without Ime Udoka. He's been really gutsy. He's evolved. He's done a lot of things that have shown progression, just like we look for in a player. Like, how are they different throughout the year? What changes year 1 to year 2? We're talking about Tatum's passing and playmaking earlier. Coaching's kind of the same thing. Like where is he starting to get his feel and starting to grow? So where I struggle with apology is, like, I don't necessarily think our criticisms were wrong. As long as you weren't part of, like, the fire Ime, it's like, all right, let's calm down. It's a rookie head coach. Like, that was a bridge too far. If you're in that camp, yeah, you owe Ime an apology. Like, you dead serious. You owe him an apology. But if you didn't go that far, like, and I don't think we ever took it that far. We were certainly frustrated and we had our criticisms. I mean, honestly, I think he's addressed them. Like, that's the thing, is, like, I don't think the criticisms were necessarily wrong, but we were frustrated that it felt, robotic with some of his substitution patterns. That's not the case anymore. Like I said, we're getting Peyton Pritchard in the closing 5, and then he's swapping Derek White in for defense. Like, he's making, he's making changes on the fly. He went to the Rob Williams, free safety concept. Like, that wasn't something that was available. Like, he continuously was playing Marcus Smart and Dennis Schroeder together after we knew that wouldn't work. He went away from that after that Knicks game, after that debacle against the Knicks. In the season, I'm telling you, right now, the way I feel about this season, that's the line in the sand for me. That game right there. I think a lot of things changed after that debacle, after we fell apart. RJ Barrett hits the crazy shot. I think that's the line in the sand moment for this season so far. And a lot of that started with, hey, right after that game, it was, when Ime does something just like with the switching, where he, like, did it purposely, like, so much that it was like, we're going to learn this by over switching almost, just to make sure that we get that habit. He went so hard in on the never playing Marcus and Dennis together again that I don't think until Dennis was traded they ever, like, shared the court unless there was injuries together again. And so I think that's an area that you can look to. So when we think about apologizing, I actually don't necessarily think it's an apology. Like, I just think it's an acknowledgement that he's made changes and he's gone above and beyond, and he's really hammered in to the defense is our identity. That's how we're going to win. He's simplified it, gone with the smaller lineup of the guys he trusts, and we're seeing the results right now. So I think he deserves all the credit in the world. I'm not 100% sure that we have to apologize, but I just think we need to make sure we give him his due, and we're certainly doing that.
Yeah, when I say apologize, like, maybe I chose the wrong word when I put that tweet out. Like, it was just a passing thought, and that's kind of when I tweet is just, But, like, for me,
that's what Twitter is. It's a bunch of passing thoughts that we all put together into the world, and then people crucify us for it. That's how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. And I get crucified my fair share. I think for me, it was very much along the lines of, like, hey, some of these criticisms we gave you were super early in the season, and maybe we should have waited. You know what I mean? Like, if you start building something, you might not do it the same way as somebody else, but the end result will still get there. You know what I mean? You're just doing it, you're going a roundabout way. And I remember speaking about the over exaggerations. Like, you get people to do things very exaggerated, and then you start peeling away the levers until you get to a refined product. And that's very clear now. That's what Udoka was doing. And I kind of saw that in a way, because I remember specifically going on a tangent about it. But at the same time, it was still frustrating to witness, because you could see other teams figuring stuff out faster. Do you know what I mean? But looking back, it was like, wow, he had to unwire bad habits to start putting new wiring in. So maybe we did owe him an apology, more not for what people said, obviously, apart from the fire Ime crowd, but more for how quickly everyone got on his back, how unapologetically insistent we were on success instantly.
Yeah. I think yeah, I would agree with that, because I think that's the one I kept trying to tell myself patience, but when you have 3 to 4 podcasts a week that you're on, that patience, it doesn't always last as long as you want it to, because you feel like you have to say something. And there were certain times where, we talked about it. It felt like, hey, can we copy and paste our episode from last week and then just like insert the new team name that we played, because it felt like the same podcast, but it was trying to understand patience, but while also trying to find something new to talk about. It was really difficult at certain points, earlier in the year. But I do think that's a huge part of it, is that, we probably didn't have enough patience. That part I think I can totally agree on. And this is something that, and also something that I think is different with Ime than with sometimes other new head coaches, is typically when you're a new head coach, especially a rookie head coach too, and you come into a situation, generally you don't have a ton of expectations. This team was expected to compete. That's a different level. That's a lot harder for a rookie coach to have to deal with. Like, you think about back to, Brad Stevens, when he became the head coach of the Celtics, we had just torn down everything. We weren't expecting to be good. We just traded KG, Pierce, Jayson, Terry. We got a bunch of draft picks back. We were expecting to rebuild, and Brad Stevens exceeded those expectations, but he was able to do so under the veil of, hey, we're just kind of sitting back and seeing what happens. Like, whatever, if we end up winning 20 games, that's fine. If we end 30 games, that's fine. Like, there's not really, where with Ime, it was like, bro, you have 2 all-stars. What are you doing? Why aren't you better? Why aren't we better as a team? Sure. And that's just a whole other level of complicated expectations that probably was not factored into, his evolution, him trying to grow as a coach, is that he's doing so in this bubble of expectations that makes it, that much more critical, or like there's so much more eyes on it, that it was really difficult. And now that we're getting a little bit of space, as we're getting, 65 plus games and whatever we are at this point, you're seeing that evolution. You're seeing, that's what it was at the beginning of the season that we're now seeing the benefits of down the stretch.
So what I'm hearing here is, if Udoka had a theme song for his first 4 months in charge of the Celtics, it would be Avril Lavigne, Complicated.
Man, that's a throwback. I was wondering where you were going to go with this.
Anyway, I completely agree. I do think that the expectations placed on his shoulders from the get-go were tough. I've got one more topic, and I think you articulated it perfectly. So I don't like me saying anything else now is just reinforcing your point and boring everybody that's listening. And I have one more point I want to hit before we go, and that's the acquisition of a Mr. Nick Stauskas on a 2-year contract, former top 10 pick, 2008. No, it can't be 2008.
No, it was 2014.
There we go. I don't know where I had 08 in my head from. You mentioned KG. It's probably threw me back to 2008. 2014, former top 10 pick, coming off 2 games in which he'd accumulated a total of 100 points. He's been shooting 46 point something %. I did have the number in front of me, but I've moved away from it. 46.6% in the G League this season, a career 35% shooter in the NBA from deep, 35.4 if we want to be precise. He's coming in. I'm not sure we're going to see him get many minutes, but at least it's a shooter that isn't a complete project. This guy's got NBA experience on multiple teams, and B, you can just plug and play for 4, 5, 10 minutes a game and just use him as a single skill specialist. And I think the biggest point there is he's not a project. He's not a Sam Hauser that has never really got any NBA experience. He doesn't play center like Luke Cornett. And you know what I mean? He's not Aaron Neesmith that's still learning. This is just a guy that's a single skill specialist with NBA experience on a cheap deal that's coming off the back of one of the most productive weeks of his career. I feel confident in that. If you need scoring, I feel confident in putting him out there.
Yeah, I like this move because I think this is one of the moves that I've actually paid a little bit more attention to, like then the signing of Matt Ryan or Malik Fitz, and I'm missing a few other guys that honestly, I'll be real, I have not paid a ton of attention to because I don't think they're going to see the floor. And if they do, it's only because something has gone horribly wrong, or something has gone exceedingly well and we're up by 50 points late in the fourth. So other than that, those guys don't expect, and even with Nick Stauskas, to your point, I think it's more like the 5 to 10 minute range. But this is kind of some of the conversations that we had like, who does Ime like to play? And for the most part, he does like to lean on veterans a little bit more. And so I think where Nick Stauskas has a little bit of a resume, there is a chance that he gets those opportunities, because that's something that I think was evident last night, obviously after Jaylen not playing last night, resting that ankle. Nesmith goes down early. Man, just an ankle graveyard, the TD guard in the last couple games. Just ankles going down left and right. But, Aaron Nesmith goes down, and then you're left with like, all right, so what do we do? And you could tell Nesmith went down 5 minutes in. So we didn't see, he didn't feel comfortable going to Hauser. And I don't think, that grouping beyond about the 9-10 guys that we really talk about on this program are really guys that Ime wants to run out there unless we hit those scenarios that I mentioned before. And so what we ended up with was a lot of 3 big lineups with Grant Williams, Daniel Tice, Horford, Rob Williams, whatever it was. And, I think you can get away with that for moments. That's not necessarily sustainable. So I think you need to have a little bit more security in the back pocket. And that's what I think Nick Stauskas will be. And so to your point, I don't know how much run he's going to get, but I do hope that he gets the minutes that Sam Hauser wasn't able to get last night when Nesmith goes down. I hope that Stauskas can come in and give you those 5 to 10 minutes. And ideally, you just want him to be able to not get killed on the defensive end, but be able to then, prop up your offense and knock down a couple of those open shots in those 5 to 10 minutes. And that's really all you're looking for. And that's what he is, at least based off the G League and what he came in to the league as, that's what he's supposed to be. So I'm interested to see if Ime gives him those small sample size chances and see if he can kind of, capitalize on them.
Yeah. So to go back to our hashtag nerd squad, I just want to throw this out there because as you just said, you want that offense to be propped up. You want that defense to be hidden where you can be hidden. And because of Stauskas' NBA resume, we should see some of that. One of the main plays that the Celtics run are hammer screens. They run a bunch of hammer sets, and that's literally just a screen where you set facing away from the baseline and you set it towards the corner so that your corner free guy who was on the wing can sink, get the ball and hit, or raise out the corner onto the wing and hit. I'll put up, if somebody wants to know, just tweet at me and I'll put you a video up of a hammer screen. But one of the things that is really good for is catch and shoot free guys that are just literally, we don't want you to put the ball on the floor. We don't want you to do anything other than catch the ball in space and fire threes. Running Stauskas in hammer sets is going to be fantastic. Running him off pin downs where you just set a wide pin, he curls over the pin down, gets the ball and shoots. Great. If he has to put the ball on the floor, I'm not going to feel so confident. I just want you putting him in positions where it's, hey, come off this pin down, catch and shoot. Come off this, like sink into the corner or lift out of the corner off a hammer screen, catch and shoot. Guess what? If you can hit 37% of your threes doing that, your career is going to start going on an upward trajectory. Yeah. And you've been struggling to make that happen for now. Boston are one of the better ball movement teams at the moment. They're very intricate in the way they run their screening systems anyway. I feel like there's going to be a bunch of opportunity for Stauskas to, if you can hit your threes, you're going to get minutes, because at the moment, the other guys that are meant to be hitting their threes aren't hitting their threes. I mean, before Nesmith went down, he airballed a three.
Man, our guy, Aaron Nesmith, and the thing was, like, to your point, the offense flowed so beautifully and he got such a beautiful open look and couldn't have missed it by more than what felt like 30 feet. Like it was that far off. I feel really bad for Aaron Nesmith. I hope that he's fine with this ankle injury, but I got to be honest, Adam, I'm kind of out on Aaron Nesmith for this season. Not long-term yet, but I think this season, I just can't see a world in where all of a sudden it's going to click. I think last night was kind of the last opportunity for that to happen, where he gets to start, maybe boost the confidence a little bit. And then, he horribly airballs that three and that wide open three off great ball movement. And it's the thing that's the ideal shot and roll that we needed, was that play right there, ball movement. He did a great job relocating to the corner. I think it was Marcus Smart found him. It was everything you could have wanted. In the end, the shot just wasn't even close. And then he ends up hurting himself. And I think, I don't want to say that's the last we're going to see of Aaron Nesmith this year, but I don't think we're going to see a ton more of Aaron Nesmith.
I think Stauskas pushes Nesmith back in that rotation. I genuinely do. And I think that might be the best thing for him. As I said on the podcast earlier in the week, for me, I'm very much in the mindset of Nesmith is going through what Grant Williams went through, and he just needs to spend this summer watching film and adjusting his game, whether that means he needs to bulk up, whether that means he needs to really double down on choosing one or two specific skills to specialize in coming into next year, just to be like, right, I'm a specialized role player, and I'm going to expand on that once I'm cemented in the rotation. Whatever he needs to do, it's going to happen in the offseason. There's not enough time left this year for any growth. I'd much rather him part of me just wants him pulled from the rotation and given developmental time.
And that's what I'm kind of reading into the Stauskas signing a little bit. To your point, is that I think like moving forward, like, you know, Peyton Pritchard has solidified himself. We talked about he's even getting some closing minutes. Daniel Tice is going to be that, you know, third big, or if we need to go extra big and move Grant down to the 3, Tice is going to get some minutes. And then after that, I don't think there's many other guys who are not solidly in the rotation that are getting minutes. And so I think if there is an op, it's probably going to go to Stauskas at this point. Doesn't seem like they want to go to Hauser yet. So I think Stauskas is potentially the guy that slides in there. And Nesmith, it's, you know, like you said, we'll see next year. But I'm not planning on anything popping at this point.
Yeah, I'm at the point now where I'm just like, yo, let the guy develop away from the limelight.
Yeah,
and you've brought a guy in that's been fighting to get back into the league, has something to prove right now with the experience necessary. Let's give him a go and let's see what happens. And if it doesn't work, you know, if Nesmith's had 4 or 5 weeks extra development away to rebuild that confidence, maybe some time down in Maine to get that rhythm and that run back, swap him in and out, do what you need to do. But let's see what we've got under the hood in Stauskas, as in fitting him. We know what Stauskas is as a player. We've seen it before around the league, but let's see how he fits with this team, because fit and situation play an enormous part in a player's ability to succeed or fail in the league. And I think that, you know, whenever you get a new guy, you kind of need to keep that in mind, that does this fit and this situation enhance what they're capable of doing. And you've seen it with like Josh Richardson. The fit and situation was exceptional for him in Boston under Udoka. I'm assuming it'll be the same in San Antonio. Now, we have ran on a little while. I know you need to start work soon. I know that I need to go and collect the child from school. So and then I've got to edit this and get it up. So we're going to end it here. Now, before we go, make sure that you scroll down, you find them 5 stars. They're not going to be a color at the moment. They're going to be opaque. Hit the 5th one, not the 1st, the 5th. Hit it once. It's going to say you have left a 5-star review. We're going to be super grateful. Then scroll a little bit further down. It's going to have a little comment box. Write something nice. Adam's awesome. Will's awesome. Greg's awesome. If you ain't going to write nothing nice, that's fine. I understand. Some people only want to leave a bad review, like not with us, but, you know, I only leave reviews when I'm not impressed with something. If I'm impressed, I don't say anything. That's just the way society usually works. And now, if you've already left a review, or you're on a podcasting app that doesn't allow you to leave a review, that's cool too. There's other ways you can support us. First of all, by responding to this tweet when I put this show out with #NerdSquad or #NerdConfidence or whatever you want it to be. And secondly, my boy Will's a marketing genius, came up with this whole script for you. It's coming right off the dome right now. Well, what else can they do for us, hombre?
Yes, if you want to spread the good word of the Celtics Pod, Celtics Blog podcast here, and you don't have technology, or you don't like going on technology, word of mouth is a great way to do it. So if you're like Adam and you got a kid, or you're like Greg and maybe you're a teacher, talk to your fellow teachers, talk to your kids' teachers, talk to your babysitters. Let them know if they're trying to follow the Celtics, the only way to do it, the best way to do it, is by joining the 3-man weave, spontaneous 3-man weave today, by the way. You're welcome. The Celtics Blog, Celtics Pod podcast. Come follow it. Adam Taylor, Will Weir, Greg Manegas. Hit us up. We'll be here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tune in.
Have a fabulous Friday. Fantastic, awesome, amazing, splendid, stupendous, whatever word you want to use. Make sure your Friday and weekend have that same energy. We'll catch you again on Monday. Namaste.
Peace.